What's up, guys? I'm actually on the Appalachian Trail in North Carolina right now. If you missed my last video, I came down here to hang out with my friend Evan, but I also came down to finish the last 6 miles of the Appalachian Trail that I hadn't hiked yet, because when I came through here earlier this year, it was a forest fire, so it was closed. Anyways, while I'm here and I've got the gang back together, me, Evan, and Luke, we thought it would be fun to do a Q&A video. On one of my last trail videos, I did say that I would do a Q&A video, and so a bunch of you guys left questions on that. We picked a few, and here's our answers. Welcome to our Q&A video.
Hello.
What, if anything, would you have done differently?
I think that if I would have had a little bit longer. I was trying to finish in 4 months, and if I would have given myself 6 months, I still could have gone at the 4-month pace, but if something went wrong, I wouldn't have felt so much pressure to keep going. And I think I would recommend to anybody who's thinking about a through hike to go ahead and plan for 6 months. If you do it quicker than that, that's great, but at least you have that buffer there to give yourself a little chance to slow down if you need to.
If Luke decided he wanted to hike the remaining miles he missed for the sake of doing the whole trail, would you hike with him or tell him to pound sand?
Of course, I would hike the remaining miles of the trail with Luke if that's what he wanted to do. But fortunately for me, I don't think that's something he's really dying to do or anything. I think that there are some sections that he missed that we would love to do together. For example, the Triple Crown of Virginia with McAfee Knob. But hopefully he doesn't ever decide that he wants to hike Pennsylvania, which he missed most of, because I would not enjoy that, but I would do it for him. Do you feel like the trail changed your relationship? If so, how? Or do you feel like you and Liz changed the trail? Johnny Mac.
Well, Johnny Mac, thank you for those glasses. I don't feel like we changed the trail much, to be honest with you. I mean, the trail seems pretty much the same. But I do think it changed our relationship in a few different ways, especially with pooping and going to the bathroom in front of each other. It's a big one. I mean, you got to get a little more comfortable when you're in the middle of the woods, and you got to figure it out. But you know, we had to go through some things during the hike, which made us a lot stronger in a lot of different ways. So, I mean, in all reality, it changed our relationship in a better, just because you have to solve different problems when you're in the middle of the woods hiking.
What did you use to film, and what apps did you use?
To edit.
To edit. It doesn't say that. Oh, what editing apps did you use?
You want to answer first?
Yeah, well, in my video descriptions, the videos that I made, they have a text description that you can find on YouTube, and I always listed the cameras that I used, but they were always the same. I had an iPhone 7 Plus, which has video stabilization, which I think is important, and I had a Canon, I think it's a G7X, one of the older versions, which also has image stabilization. I filmed with one of those two cameras, or both of them, and then I would edit with, everything was done on my phone, all the editing. I used LumaFusion to do the editing.
I used my phone mostly to film, which was the iPhone 10, and then when I was up in New Hampshire, Luke had bought me a GoPro for my birthday, so I started using the GoPro also by the end of the hike. And then for editing, I kind of went a roundabout way to do it, because I still do this. I was not very experienced in video editing yet, so I used a combination of iMovie and one that was called Video Leap. And the reason for that was I started off with iMovie and then decided I needed like more options and features, so I came across this Video Leap, which I really like, but it was easier for me to do some things on iMovie since I was already used to using that, so I sort of like will edit in one and then download it and then edit in the other one, which, like I said, is a very roundabout way to do it, and I don't recommend.
My answer was shorter.
Yes, it was. Which towns did you like best? Where would you like to go back and visit?
It was always fun getting into town, but it's funny that I don't remember the towns very much, except at the end, New Hampshire and Maine, and I was excited often to get into towns. I think that I would like, though, to go back and do New Hampshire and Maine over at some point, because I think at that point the through hiking part of through hiking was getting in the way of the hiking part. And I wasn't enjoying it as much as I probably should have been, because I was just kind of hurting all over. There wasn't any specific pain except for my leg a little bit, but I was so focused on getting finished and feeling like I was going to break down that I probably wasn't enjoying the hike as much as I could have. So New Hampshire and Maine are so beautiful. I'm going to go back there and do those sections over again someday.
Who inspired you to hike?
So I had never really hiked much growing up or anything like that. I randomly started hiking a little bit when I lived out in Hawaii, and then I did a couple of day hikes in New Hampshire. And around that time, a few years ago, a acquaintance of mine, Robin, who I knew from Hawaii, hiked the Appalachian Trail, and so she posted a few pictures online about that, and that was the first I had ever heard of it. So that's really the person who inspired me to hike the AT specifically. What advice would you give to someone supporting a thru hiker?
I think the advice I would give, if you do come out and support a thru hiker, you can't complain about shit, because they're going through a lot worse stuff than you. And when you're doing sections, you're not dealing with the mental side of it. You're dealing with just the physical, and physical is temporary, and it's not, you can't sit there and bring the group down. You got to focus on the group as a whole, and you can't, you want to keep them positive, and you can't be negative for the time that you come out and bring them down. So that's the main thing. And bring sodas. Like, if you're coming onto the trail and you're hiking in like a couple miles, you got to bring them a snack. You can't not bring them a snack. You just got off of a car, So, especially too, if you're coming out to meet someone that is doing a thru hike, you have to remember that it is their hike. And, to meet them and find them, they're already worrying about their mileage to get to the next resupply and what town they're going to stay in and how they're going to shower and so many different things. So a big part of it is figuring out how to meet them on their schedule and not yours. So you have to figure out where to go, where to drop your vehicle, how to get there, what the flight is, what you're going to do to get back, and kind of be, in the same mindset with them on what they're doing, so when you can go out and meet with them and line it up. So it's kind of, you got to think about their hike and focus on, if you're going to go and join them, you got to focus on getting there without causing more stress, because when you're out here, it is stressful when you're trying to figure out where your food's at and how much TP you have left. So yeah, that's about it.
How did you avoid the party culture?
Well, we just didn't partake in the party culture. Let's be real. I mean, there wasn't that much of it. There wasn't, we come to a shelter, it wasn't like everybody's doing keg stands in the woods. It's, most party scene that I saw was somebody having a beer at the end of the night. So it's really, I feel like the party scene, like we talk about in towns, are more than anything, but in the woods, there's not much. I mean, they're going to have a tall boy at the end of the day. It's not like, like everybody's tearing it up.
Yeah, I think that it is partially who you surround yourself with. And we fell into a group of 3 of us or 4 of us that didn't really party that much, which was helpful. But also, you don't see as much of it as one would think in the woods. People aren't really packing out alcohol. You'll see it more in town when people are partying it up in town. Do most hikers fall into a group? Do most of the older hikers stick together? What are the dynamics of a group of 30-plus-year-olds?
When I set off on the hike, I wasn't sure if I would meet up with other people, and I had seen many videos where people film groups or they don't film groups. Oftentimes, somebody will do a series of videos and not show other people because maybe they feel uncomfortable showing other people. So I didn't know what was going to happen. I was perfectly happy with going solo, but as it turns out, it's such a long hike that by the, you get halfway into it, and most people are grouped up with other people. And at least loosely. They don't necessarily hike all day together, but they're getting to the same spot. And it's no problem, but it just happens naturally. It would be really, really hard not to fall into a group, I think. And I think that if you got all the way to those New England states and you weren't hiking around other people, you'd seem a little bit antisocial. I don't remember anybody in that situation. If anybody was, it's fine. They can do the AT that way. But it's kind of a social trail.
How do you take care of yourself on the trail? Stretching, yoga / exercises, foot maintenance, etc.
So this is something I was really good about early on in the trail. I was trying to stretch almost daily. I do some yoga in real life, so I use some yoga exercises, and then I'd done some physical therapy before the trail, so some exercises specific for my knee or stretches. But I had more time back then, and then as time went on and you're doing higher mile days, there was just less time. It got really rainy, really muddy, so I got really lazy about that stuff as time went on. So I guess I was really just lucky because I do think that stuff is important. What were your favorite or least favorite days on the trail?
So favorite, obviously I married you, which is big. But another favorite day, and this came to me last night, was White House Landing. The time we got to the sign where they said they had free cannabis, and we took the boat across the river, and that night the only way that we could all get our phones charged was them taking them. So nobody had phones, nobody had video cameras, and we all sat there and talked and told stories and watched fireworks, and it was just kind of that big, it had a lot of feeling that night. I mean, we were doing canoes, we saw Katahdin on the lake. It was definitely a big night that we all really connected, and with a lot of other people as well. It was fun. Least favorite would be, some of the days in the rain, and I mean, there was not like a specific day that was the worst day, but there's days that sucked. But I mean, for the most part, it was always kind of cool to be out here, and I wasn't dealing with the mental aspect, so I was coming out every 2 weeks. So it was, even if it sucked bad, it still wasn't, I didn't have too many bad days.
Did you ever consider quitting? If so, where were you on the trail?
I got really sick at one point, and I never really figured out what was wrong with me, but it lasted for a couple weeks. And there was a point when I was going to go get tested for Lyme disease in Rutland, when I went into the hotel where we were staying, and I was supposed to go down to the urgent care, and I couldn't really get out of the bed. I couldn't stay awake. I had no energy, and it was just really, really bad. I didn't care at that point if I lived or died, much less continue with the trail. And it was hard from there on out. I recovered from that little episode. And I did make it down to urgent care when Liz sent me a text which had some expletives in it, and how important it was that I get to the doctor. And it got me out of bed, even though I didn't think I was going to be able to get down there. And I wasn't going to quit. I was going to keep going until my body literally couldn't go. And as it went on in New Hampshire, man, I got worried a little bit that maybe I was going to cause permanent injury to my body if I kept going, because I was in a little bit of pain. But quitting, no. I was in it until I physically couldn't go any further, even if eventually I did do permanent damage to my body. So I'm glad the trail ended, because it could have worked out really badly for me.
What are the biggest problems you faced, or the hardest thing about your hike?
So I don't know if there was like a major well, I guess Lyme disease was kind of one of my biggest problems I faced, because I just felt so horrible during that time. But otherwise, I don't think anything specifically was really, really hard about the hike individually, but all together, I think the hike was definitely harder than I thought it was going to be. But not any, it wasn't like the physical part of it was harder than I thought, or a certain mountain was really hard, or a certain challenge. It just sort of like all combined together was kind of difficult.
Did you stick to not using privies the whole way? Question mark.
I didn't use any privies.
I didn't either.
There was an exception.
Yeah. Evan made a rule that we both used.
Yeah, we followed that rule. The above the tree line exception, where there's, I guess in New Hampshire, there's some huts that are up high that have privies, but they don't really seem like privies because they're in the huts.
Yeah, they're almost full bathrooms, but they are privies.
And there's really, outside, there's no trees or anything when you're hiking, so.
Yeah, it's all rock, it's all above tree line. We were up there staying overnight. There was nowhere else to go, so we kind of had to use it then. But otherwise, we did not.
I stuck to the woods. Let me do it again. It's like, get him away from the
I'm
camera.
leaving all of this in.
Luke and Liz.
Yes.
How did you? I'm gonna go back to the original one.
How did you avoid the party culture, babe?
How do I look?
You look good.
Like 10?
10. 11. Don't make noise, please, if you can.
Gosh, I hope I can do this good.
You can move. You don't have
So
to
nervous.
stay.
I know.
Combating boredom started with usually, getting to Liz, between like 10 or 11, I'd get her going. And then I'd have to kind of counteract that by like noon, so it would be a good rest of the day, have a nice lunch. Are you stopping my recording?
I was going to stop it for a second. That just sounded really inappropriate. Can we just rewind and try this one more time?
What happened?
I got her going by 10 or 11, but you didn't feel
That's about an hour.
that just came out way, way wrong. All right, so
saying
we're starting
sex.
over.
You guys
Ready?
got dirty minds.
How was that?
It's perfect. Okay.
Did you see it?
Who would have to, I don't know, I mean, there's not really, what happened?
So you're just banging things.
Can't be the way it can be, Evan.
So, okay, and last question for you.
I'm doing good.
What?
Motherfucker. That wasn't good enough for YouTube, wasn't it?
What were your favorite?
Well, I did.
Babe,
What?
would you please? We're almost done. Can
let's
we
go,
just get
let's
through
go,
this?
let's go.
All right, guys, that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.